I'm tired of saying this, but I'm going to continue shouting it into the infinite void. Stop telling us Batman's origin story!
That's not how this works! That's not how any of this works!
Whoa, 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 yeah, we are in the place of
Hi-ho, GB Mythos here, and welcome to the Little Old People Podcast. I'm here with my co-old person, Mark.
AKA the little black dude. If this is your first time listening, we're two oldish nerds looking at random fandoms from varying directions.
I'm a historian and archaeologist by degree and a former wage slave by trade. Mark's a jeweler, YouTuber, and fellow fan enthusiast. Well, my fellow fan enthusiasts, this is our official 10th episode. 12 if you count the specials, but hey, semantics. Also, it's been 1 year since we've launched this project. Before we begin, I just want to say thank you to Mark for joining me on this mad roller coaster of stupid, and to all of our listeners and friends for their continued support.
Yay!
It has been my pleasure. Anytime I get to get nerdy with somebody awesome, I take it!
Nice. We have people listening to us literally all over the world, which is just mind-blowing and frankly humbling. So thank you all. Please stay with us as we make every effort to continue growing and experimenting and just having a good time.
Because I am having a good time, you're having a good time, and hopefully all of you nerdy fan enthusiasts out there are having a good time. Let's keep this going!
Yes, into the future! Now, on our last few episodes, they have been very comic book and comic movie oriented, but please stick with us for at least one more. In this episode, we're going to do a review of the audiobook, Batman No Man's Land. There will be links to the audiobook on the YouTube version of this podcast, and we will do our best to keep the first part of this review as spoiler-free as possible. Now, the story was originally written as a comic series that was published in 1999, and it was written by Jordan B. Gorfinkel. Now, I have a quote here from a 2018 article from 13thdimension.com called Batman No Man's Land 20 years later. Batman's new status quo came about in part because the character's editors simply felt bored. The Batman comics had settled into a predictable groove, but by 1998, the editors' concern was that their own boredom would spill over to their readers. Facing that ennui, editor Jordan Gorfinkel walked into Batman Group editor Denny O'Neil's office one Monday morning with a 12-page proposal that detailed how Cataclysm could lead into the No Man's Land event. Gorfinkel expected O'Neil to hate the idea, but the veteran editor actually embraced the gamble. It seemed like a dangerous story to try. It's a story that has never been told, as far as I know, certainly not in comics. That's always a reason to do something. One of the reasons the changes seemed new to Batman was because the new writers and editors had never written Batman comics before. Besides Bob Gale, the screenwriter for Back to the Future, crime novelist Greg Rucka was also brought on to write No Man's Land's third story arc. He would become a mainstay of the Batman books into the new millennium, end quote. Now, the fact that they brought in people that were brand new to write this is amazing to me because it brings such a fresh perspective, and you can feel that fresh perspective in this, in the story. So, No Man's Land was adapted into a novelization by Greg Rucka in 2000, although some characters, like Superman and Azrael, who were in the comics, were left out of the novel. In October and November of 2011, GraphicAudio released a 2-volume, 9-hour audio drama, and this is what we're going to review today. Now, I personally found this drama in 2017, and have listened to it multiple times since then. It's beautifully written, acted, characterized, and scored. The story is quite compelling, and you can just feel the impact of the strikes in the fight scenes. You follow more side characters, minor named players, and villains than you do Batman. And in my opinion, as much as I love Batman, the story is stronger for it. A few months ago, I introduced Mark to it, and he appears to have some feelings. So let's talk about it.
Feeling. Whoa, 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 feeling. I feel like the comic community could benefit from more of these types of presentations. For the first few minutes, I felt like I was falling into the world being created. The voice acting and the Foley work, it created atmosphere, unlike any audiobook I've listened to. And I used to pass time at my overnight job listening to audiobooks like the entirety of the Harry Potter series, Richest Man in Babylon, and things of that nature. And yeah, this beats all of them without even trying.
Nice.
When I tell you that I loved Joker and Harley, this is not the, oh my God, relationship goals crap that people who don't actually understand the relationship between them say. I mean, they straight up took Joker and Harley out of Batman the Animated Series and put them in this audiobook. That's how well this was performed. This is also the reason why I personally don't agree with Heath Ledger Joker. Nearly every time the Joker does something in this story, his number one goal is to be funny. And his idea of funny is death and destruction to make a point.
Yeah.
Even though Heath Ledger definitely brought the crazy aspect of the character, this is why they call him the Clown Prince of Crime. Clown! He does things funny! Damn it!
Including but not limited to Pratt falling off the toilet even when there's no one around to see him.
Yes!
So we open with Oracle, keeping a journal on the first days of No Man's Land, the first day the US government abandoned Gotham City. She talks about being Batgirl and does her best to pull off the masks. And she's writing in a way that many monks during the first initial onset of the Black Death in the 1300s were writing. They were writing saying, this is, they felt like they were in the last days of humanity. And there was one monk who was writing in his journal, and he's like, I'm leaving parchment behind. That way, in case in the future there really are any sons of Adam left, they can continue the chronicle. And you definitely get that vibe from Oracle as she's writing, because she feels it, and it essentially is the last days of Gotham. It's winter, but Gotham has been having 2020 Groundhog Day edition for about 3 or 4 years. They've had 2 waves of plague. They don't mention what the illness is. Fires, a massive earthquake, and then the government's unwillingness to help rebuild their crumbling infrastructure.
Why are these writers psychic, and why didn't they warn us?
I know, right? I mean, this is such an evocative opening, and I am in no way doing it the justice that it deserves, just talking about it in this way. We're introduced to a cast of interesting people like Commissioner Jim Gordon and his wife Sarah Essen, Helena Bertinelli, aka the Huntress, Detective Montoya, Detective Bullock, and dozens of others.
Quick note on Detective Renee Montoya. The entire time I listened to this story, I kept calling her the Question in my head. She wouldn't assume the mantle of the Question for another 6 years in the comic releases. That happens during the Infinite Crisis storyline, as she assists the previous Question in a bunch of investigations. But how her character is portrayed here makes it all the more simple to comprehend why she became the new Question, and it brought me further into the story.
Okay. I personally did not know that. I went and looked it up, and then I started reading the summaries, and I was like, oh, that's actually really interesting. And then you're right, I began to see some of those things in there, and I was like, okay, see, nuance. I'm finding more nuance. I love this thing. It's great. We are also introduced to the best version of the Penguin that I have ever read in a while in this book. Penguin is running an underground, pun intended, racket in the fashion district where formerly valuable items like paintings and jewelry are exchanged for food and protection. And this makes so much sense to me regarding his character. He's always considered himself a cultural expert and a dabbler in the finest things in life. And yet at heart, he's still a thug. So of course he would set up this kind of a racket. Absolutely.
Every time he spoke, I could see Burgess Meredith. Every time the Penguin spoke, I saw Burgess Meredith, and I was waiting for that. I was waiting for that. Zero hatred for the voice actors for me. And I damn sure want to cosplay as him. I came up with the idea to do that several months ago and just haven't worked around it yet, but this is bringing that back for me, mostly because I'm looking for excuses to wear top hats.
Hey, it's like tiaras. Every day is a tiara day. You want to wear a top hat? You do you, man.
Hey, you gotta be fancy sometime.
Exactly. I mean, Poison Ivy's in this story, but she's not really a character. She disappears. We hear her mentioned. She disappears into the park with the plants, and that's it. That's pretty much the beginning and the end of her character. And as you mentioned, we get a hilariously crazy Joker who's on a rampage with Harley, and it feels so real. It's just everything.
Yeah, Poison Ivy doesn't exist so much as a character as a force of nature, to turn a phrase there. So yeah, she doesn't so much show up, but she is a part of the story. And even without having a single spoken line, still has a lot of impact on what goes on in the story itself. I love that. But how do we talk about this without mentioning Two-Face? Two-Face's split is so well illustrated in this story. He talks to himself in two distinct voices.
Yes. Kudos to the voice actor.
Yes.
Kudos, kudos, kudos.
Absolutely. I don't care what anyone says. I enjoyed that concept for him. It's where they got the idea for Two-Face's character in The Dark Knight Rises, rather than having him being, the wild and crazy guy with a half-burnt face. Kind of like, how Tommy Lee Jones was in the Joel Schumacher Batman and Robin. He was a conflicted man who wanted justice served, but was frustrated, and he was angry, and he was hurt. And it just happened to have a half-burnt face.
Yep.
His presentation was great enough, but the fact that he's consistently trying to do the right thing throughout the whole story gives him depth that people forget that Harvey Dent has.
Yes, and I appreciated that because Harvey Dent, for me, has always been, in a way, similar to Mr. Freeze. He's a sympathetic villain.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, some of the things he does in his villain persona are reprehensible, but the way that we are introduced to this character, you do feel sorry for him because he happened to just have a really bad experience, and it's turned him into this thing.
It becomes sympathy for the devil straight off.
Yeah. And what happens to Harvey in this story is honestly kind of heart-wrenching, but I'm fanboying here. We get to know these characters as real people making, in what is a sensible world, reprehensible decisions. But you are also given the opportunity to see why they are doing what they're doing, and it makes them human.
This is also one of the rare times where minor characters get some development. The henchman Garrett, for example, is likable. The two brothers who get attacked and are saved by Batgirl, they have a whole backstory. The fact that they dedicated that time was what really made me happy.
Yes.
Even the little boy named Matt and his dog, that whole scene just tugs at your heartstrings. Stories where characters have reasons to exist and stories to tell are so much more pleasing to read as well as to listen to.
Yes, we even get to see inside Gordon's marriage, which is rather adorable, to be honest. You know me, I am not a romantic, but the way he and Sarah interact was just adorable.
Mm-hmm.
And
a couple of brown chicken, brown cow situations, they're always fun.
Yeah.
The interactions between Oracle, Batman, and the Huntress all feel really tense. And you can hear the pain in Oracle's voice during certain parts of it. Mm-hmm. Huntress, trying to make her way into the Bat family nearly brought me to tears in some places. And then, of course, having Nightwing and Robin, Tim Drake, actual Robin and not Damian Wayne.
Fuck that kid!
Having him as part of the story just made it feel like the comic that this was based on. I mean, I'm not a huge Batman fan, Green Lantern for life, but I give respect to good storytelling, and No Man's Land is crammed full of it.
And I could not agree more. Every time I listen to this story, I find new depths of character and more nuance that I did not notice before. I find myself focusing on different characters and following their stories more closely than I have. And then I have these, oh, that's why moments as I'm listening. And I love that kind of stuff. Typically, I only find those things with movies, not necessarily listen to a book over and over again. So finding it in this audio drama was fantastic. There's a weight and a consequence to the actions of these people. People die in this story, and even my cold, dead heart was moved with emotion.
Yeah, please keep in mind, people dying in a DC comic does not happen very often.
No. And the reasons why they die, whether they're senseless or not, is still emotional. You still feel that impact.
Yes.
I have a decent history of listening to audio dramas. And, sadly, this is something that the world has seemingly lost interest in. I know TV's out there and it lets our brain veg out, but let's bring audio dramas back into the modern world. GraphicAudio has created magic and I'm living for it. I'm not sure what else we can say without crossing over into spoiler territory. If you don't want that, you can leave now and follow the link in the YouTube version of the podcast to be taken on a fantastic journey.
Come along and ride on the fantastic voyage.
I cannot recommend No Man's Land highly enough. After you listen, come back and let us know what you think via email, Twitter, or on our YouTube or Facebook page. I've been Chibi Mythos, he's been the Little Black Dude, and we'll see you in the next one. Still here? Then welcome to Spoilerland. You have been warned.
Dun, dun, dun.
All right. Now, we talked about reprehensible actions that fall under Cool motive, still murder. We have to talk about Gordon starting a damn gang war. I know why he felt the need to do so, but oh boy.
The Blue Boys starting a gang war was a gut punch if there ever was one for me. I like to think of Jim Gordon as a moral man who will always do the right thing possible, but like other parts of the story, we're confronted with the humanity of the characters. No Man's Land both accentuated and exaggerated characters' traits, and the war between the Low Boys and the Demons showed that off so well. And then Oracle documenting the aftermath made it even clearer.
Yeah, and it's just, and you could just feel Gordon's frustration and the fact that he has to do this, and at the same time, you're just like, but you don't. There could have been a different way. And we need to talk about Officer Pettit, William Pettit. That guy is clearly a sociopath. How did nobody notice? Not during No Man's Land, but even before that. How did he become a Gotham City police officer to begin with? And then afterwards, why did they put that guy in charge of the ammunition? Just creeping Christ on a crutch. He's clearly crazy.
The thing is, people did notice. I mean, the way that the Hugh was acting, you could see that he wasn't quite sure, but he was also extremely scared of what was going on. So of course he was going to give, as much benefit of the doubt as he could possibly muster, which thankfully didn't last as long as you would have expected.
Yeah.
God, Hugh. Oh, Hugh. But when someone is useful in difficult circumstances, you do keep them around. However, I found myself asking over and over again, where the hell does he keep finding bullets in a place where ammunition is like gold? Like, giant red flag. This dude was up to some serious fuckery.
Not even that. Yeah, the ammunition thing was a red flag. Absolutely. Giant red flag. It couldn't get any bigger. I mean, it was communist if it had been any redder. Let's talk about the fact that at the start of the war, the fight between the Blue Boys and the Low Boys and the Demons, when Gordon, Montoya, and Pettit are running away, they climb on top of the building. Gordon and Montoya cannot look at what is happening on the streets below because they are racked with guilt, knowing what they have caused and the cost of humanity that is going on down below. And Pettit is leaning over the side of the building, practically jizzing himself as he's watching this.
Yeah, that is 100% evidence that this motherfucker was crazy. He was enjoying watching two groups tear each other apart for no better reason than this is the thing we wanted to do, and God, I am loving every minute of it. Like, why didn't he drop trow at that point is the only real question you have.
Yeah, he probably had his hand in his pocket, but they just didn't mention it. It was absolutely awful.
And he just kept descending more and more and more. But the way they portrayed it, the way they showed him descending was fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, but I don't know. There's just so many things about that character. I personally would have just put him on guard duty and just said, you know what, this is it. You have to be on guard duty, but it has to be on the other side of town where I can't see you. Because there's literally no reason why I would be afraid to sleep with that man anywhere near me.
I don't blame you. Don't blame you one bit. But it wouldn't have changed his reaction to things. And that, I think, is important to the story because Pettit and his strongmen were part of the catalyst for the final part of the story. Had it not been for him flying off the handle, we would not have gotten some of the most dramatic stuff going on in the entire story. So even though he's a fucking douchebag, all day, every day, he was well portrayed and useful to the telling of the story. But everything he did just makes you hate him more and more and more.
Yeah, because if that was what they were aiming for, they hit it hook, line, and 100% sinker. And Penguin's goons using people to test where the landmines were under the bridge. Yikes. But also still really fucking funny that their first target ended up being an ass-kicking Alfred.
Yes. And it is yet another scene with Garrett. Telling the story from where he was standing gave us, a little more context on the larger players. But I like the fact that he had his own thoughts and feelings about what he was doing. When they described him and they talked about how his life was before the No Man's Land, and the fact that everything that he was, pretty much doing was just trying to survive. Surviving was his main idea. So throwing his chips in with the Penguin, who had a better plan than he could have come up with himself, made a lot of sense. Yeah. He just happened to draw the short straw when he tried to throw Alfred, who I continue to maintain is a fucking badass, into the river.
Oh, absolutely.
And these kinds of scenes work well in visual media, but they don't have the same texture in radio drama, and it worked so much better than I was expecting. Again, credit to the Foley artists because they understand the sound of the impact of hits, the difference between the sound of somebody being punched and somebody being kicked. They knew what to use, and it felt so good to listen to. And then after the whole thing's over, oh my God, friggin' Alfred goes back to being the proper gentleman's gentleman.
Yes. Yeah, when we're introduced to him, you know, you don't know that it's Alfred because the person that's talking is not British. No. So you're like, oh my God, they just picked this random old guy off the street. What are they doing? And then, you know, as soon as the scene's over, then it's, oh yes, Master Bruce. And it's just like, wait, what?
Hold on, when did this happen?
And then when you go back and listen to it again, and then you realize, you know that's Alfred, that just makes it so much better. And all I could see in my mind was that one comic where Alfred beats the crap out of Superman for something that he did to Batman, and it just makes me happy all over again.
I still would love to see a fight between Alfred and Norman Bunn from The Big O, because those two are both fucking badasses.
Listen, they raised a superhero. They can't be anything less.
That's very true.
And I'm tired of saying this, but I'm going to continue shouting it into the infinite void. Stop telling us Batman's origin story!
Yes, please take a cue. Take a cue from Spider-Man Homecoming. We know how you became a superhero. Let's get to the new stuff.
Please! I mean, literally, we see Batman talking to Alfred in the Batcave, and then 15 seconds later, where is he? Swinging off to Crime Alley. And I was just like, no. And facepalm. I get it. We understand why. We know your motivations. Just move past it.
You aren't the only orphan. You really aren't. Sweet merciful crap, we get
it. I mean, granted, if he hadn't been there, he wouldn't have met the little boy and his dog, but still.
Again, wonderful freaking scene, and oh my God, that poor kid.
But, you know, it's so cute at the end of it when the kid goes, are you really Batman? And Batman goes, yes. And the kid just goes, cool. That was the most child-accurate reaction I had ever heard.
Agreed.
Because they're not going to question it. This is what they've always been told. You have now provided them actual proof, and their response is just going to be cool. And that's
like the world makes sense a little bit more now.
Yes! Something in my world has been corrected. Fantastic. Love it. Great. Moving on. And can we talk about the reunion between Gordon and Batman? That was borderline emotional blackmail.
Absolutely. It was also pretty amusing foreshadowing, because all Gordon needed to do was just look at his face. Barring that, he would have been able to read Oracle's files, but she ended up destroying them. Jim Gordon never really wanted to know who Batman was, and we're basically told that he'll never know. It absolutely, though, was the most amazing amount of blackmail I've ever seen. It's like, this is the only thing I can give you. Like, really, dude? Really? Is this what you've been trying to protect your secret identity for so long, and you're just about to throw it over this way? The hell?
And not even that, just, I mean, we've been watching Gordon cultivating this garden, you know, since the beginning, you know, they go raid a Home Depot or whatever. Or Gotham's equivalent of same. Yeah. And, you know, everybody else picks up weapons and stuff. And Gordon does what I would do, which is fill his pockets with all the seed packets he can get. You know, he goes home. He's trying to grow food in his garden. Again, something that I would do. It makes total sense. That's what you do in the apocalypse. And then, you know, he's finally got this garden that he's been working on when he's stressed or when he's happy or when he needs to talk to his people. And it's become this place of safety, of neutral ground. And meanwhile, he's still suffering emotionally from Batman not being there and feeling betrayed by it. And then when Batman just shows back up, like that creepy ex of yours that you've been trying to forget about, and he just comes back and thinks everything's fine. Just, there's so much emotion in that scene, just listening to the conversation between these two men, and then when Batman finally just says, okay, well, this is all I can give you, and it's just like, no, what are you doing? What are either of you doing? Just talk to each other for a second.
That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works.
Yes, it's just, oh my It's a beautiful scene, but it's emotional blackmail, and at the same time, it's very, very evocative. And I'm going to keep saying it, but kudos to the actors in this. It's fantastic, and the writers too, because the actors can only work with the writing that they're given, but it's so well written. It's so well done.
Bringing up Gordon's garden, the sheer number of fucked up things that happen in that garden.
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah.
And how the hell does such a serene place have so many shitty things go on it?
Well, if you're going to be biblical, we can say you can all go all the way back to the first garden ever mentioned in current written text and say we just can't have nice things.
Yeah, I'll give you that one. Yeah. As much as I wish I could dispute you, can't really do that. No.
No. I mean, if you don't ascribe to biblical sources, then we can say in the Matrix they tried to make the world perfect and humans rejected it because it just didn't work. I mean, we just don't know how to have nice things.
It's true. I hate the fact that is the case. And further proof was Black Mask's cult.
Yeah, can we talk about them? I mean, honestly, they felt a little bit off to me. It felt tacked on. I mean, we are told the Black Mask is there. We know that he leaves the asylum when they open up the doors and let all the nuts out. But I don't know. Everything about him just felt tacked on. He could have been like Poison Ivy and just kind of, we know he's there, but he doesn't actually we don't really hear about him. That would have made more sense.
I can see that. But I always felt like, just during the entire time I was listening to it, I felt that Black Mask's cult was demonstrating the upper limit of the crazy that was going on in No Man's Land. I mean, people are inclined to do anything to make sense of a senseless time. And
that's true.
It did feel as though it was written independently of the rest of the story, but it did give some further dimension to the landscape. But being so easily made irrelevant once Batgirl couldn't stop them, and there was really nothing else after that with Black Mask, it was a bit off-putting, really.
Yeah, it was there and then it wasn't there. I mean, it was that random 2-episode side character tangent that doesn't mean anything, is completely irrelevant to the overall story. I mean, okay, so he exploded some already derelict Wayne Enterprises building, whoopty shit. It didn't add anything to the story.
No, all it did was say, hey, this place is crazy. Let's just show you how crazy. Okay, we understand how crazy. Let's stop using this character now. Moving on.
Yeah, I mean, they could have just continued on with the heavy hitters, and which they had 3 of them working in the story, and it would have continued demonstratively to show how crazy the crazy was.
Yes, very much so. We can nitpick on this kind of stuff till the cows come home. So the cows leave again and come back a second time. I mean, there were little pieces of the story that did feel a little off, because let's be honest, there's no such thing as a perfect story. Nobody can ever fill all of the plot holes. Nobody can ever come up with something that is completely airtight. Like, for example, how the hell did Mercy Graves essentially get chloroformed by Batman twice? Because Mercy is nothing if not a competent bodyguard. That is one of the things I love about Mercy Graves as a character more than anything, is how fucking badass she is at protecting Lex Luthor. But every time
I'm sorry, but you heard him breaking into Lex Luthor's place twice. Made me laugh like an idiot. I'm sorry.
Okay, here's my thing. You do it once, it's intimidating. You do it twice, now you're being an asshole. It's like, hey, I want you to rethink what you're doing. This is why I'm doing this right now. And then a couple days later, hey, just so you know, I can do this whenever I fucking want.
Exactly. I know where you live.
Another one that really gets me, because I love the fact that they brought in Nightwing. I love the fact that they brought in Robin.
Gosh, yes, he does not get used enough. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but we know why Tim Drake was there. He played a slightly larger role because he was helping Oracle with a lot of the coding for the deeds that they had protected. We never mentioned Bane, and I'm asshole for that. The fact that Bane was there was cool. I was really happy that Bane was there. I will say this: he also did not get used well enough. But I love the one thing he wanted, he was denied over and over again. He wanted a rematch with Batman, and Batman pretty much said no.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, and just walked away. Walked away.
See, that right there, that is called do it like a mouse. That's all.
Yes. His deal with the glasses came down as he was walking off. It was fantastic.
Yes. But yeah. Bane destroyed those deeds, and Oracle and Tim had to, make everything, look as though they had been, sold and then not sold at the same time, all that kind of stuff. So we knew why Tim was there. He had his role. What the fuck was Nightwing doing there? Why was Nightwing there? Other than to serve, to add tension to the conflict between him, Huntress, and Batman. What the hell was Dick Grayson doing there?
Well, if for those of you that, watch Sarcastic Writing Advice, that can't figure out what to do, create a love triangle. And that was kind of what I felt like they were attempting, but I was just like, but Batman doesn't care. Batman doesn't care about Huntress.
Nope.
He doesn't care. As long as she's not killing anybody, he gives no fucks about what she's doing.
And quite literally, Dick was digging crazy.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. But yeah, so just don't do that.
Yes, definitely a good idea not to do that. Another thing that I wondered about, now this is less a thing that needed to be answered, but more of a, what's the rest of the story? Like what happened to the babies after the Joker's prey,
Yeah.
At first, you're like, oh, well, obviously, they've returned them to their parents, that kind of thing. But there were 36 children there.
Yeah.
That could not have been a simple undertaking. First of all, there was no indication of whose babies were whose. So we had no idea who to contact. And even though we knew how many children there were and how many sets of parents, obviously, we don't know where they were. We don't know if they knew their children were gone. We don't know when they found out their children were gone. There was a whole other thing going on there, and it just started, making my, mind wind through. And, it made it.
Or even if they wanted them back now that they were gone, because how were they going to support them? I mean, the police officer, I can't remember her name now, but the doctor told her.
Christina Ware.
Yes, the doctor told her, your baby is the healthiest one I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, damn, so how bad is everybody else's kid? Like, would people even want them back? That was a huge plot hole. Mm-hmm. And I get why they didn't answer it, because in the overall grand scheme of things, it really has nothing to do with the overarching Batman story, but it is still an interesting question that was left dangling.
Mm-hmm. Those are things that are a part of the epilogue there. Now, in the comic, I'm sure they could do that a little more easily with, maybe a 2 or 3 page montage going on. As an audio drama, it would just kind of be overkill. The thing's already 9 hours long. I don't think that people would have wanted to listen for another 15, 20 minutes on that one. But we can speculate about those kind of things, and we can try and track down the idea. We can look through the other comic adaptation, and we can even go through like the fan fiction route. But that's what made this whole thing compelling. Because even though there was a satisfying conclusion for the most part, there were still things that we could sit down and pull an Arsenio Hall on. Things that make you go,
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah. I honestly, this is one of the few things that I've listened to or read or watched where I haven't stopped 3/4 of the way through and go, I wonder what the fan fiction looks like on this, and then get lost down that rabbit hole. I honestly have not done that in the years that I've listened to it, which is kind of shocking even to me. But I can't imagine that there aren't any, because there's so many things and so many situations that are easy enough to create in this situation with that just overarching and happening, a la Grave of the Fireflies in the background, where you're focused on this one thing. I mean, it's a gold mine if, you were interested in writing that.
Yeah, very much so. Like having the amount of background there to, run with is definitely a great thing. And that was one of the reasons why I enjoyed the characters they introduced, the ones that they brought out. Because we didn't talk about the inauguration of Cassandra Cain into being Batgirl.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
First of all, as a character, I love the fact that Cassandra couldn't talk. I loved that.
Yes.
Because it made the conversations between her and Barbara Gordon so much more entertaining. And knowing that she couldn't talk, but not knowing why at first, I'm sitting here like, okay, what the fuck could have happened to this girl that made her incapable of speaking? And then over time, they kind of give us little bits here and there as to why it is she doesn't talk, but she can do a bunch of other cool shit. I'm like, all right, I need to know what the hell happened. And when we finally find out that she wasn't taught to speak because she was taught to talk with her fists, oh, I loved that.
The anthropologist in me was just like, oh my God. I mean, there's literally no way there's no anthropologist on Earth that wouldn't go, I need to study this. Somebody, please, just, we'll start recording it. We don't care. Go pro her, please. For the love of God. Like,
See, you're going from the anthropology route. I'm going from the martial artist route. Sometimes the only way to understand another human being is to fight with them, whether it be physically or mentally. Whether you're having discourse or whether you're punching a dude in the face. Sometimes that's the easiest way to understand another human being. So having the concept of combat being a language, I loved the idea of that. I was like, that just gives that much more dimension to Cassandra's character. And it gave even more reason why Batman did not hesitate to start bringing her with him after the whole thing with her father David.
And you know what? And Helena's whining about, oh, he won't accept me. I just can't be Batgirl. Oh, I can't play by your... Oh my God. Put a sock in it, lady. I'm sorry. I know we're supposed to feel, some emotion other than contempt for this female character. And, I don't like being contemptuous of female characters because they're often painted in this very, underhanded and whiny manner. But to the power of A squared. Just why? She was just so uninteresting and unsympathetic. And ultimately, I was just like, no, you don't deserve the mantle. No, you can't have it. Fuck off.
Now,
and perhaps that was the wrong attitude to have, but I just didn't like her at all.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you one bit. And this is going to hurt you very badly. That is accurate to her character.
What, being a whiny bitch?
No, the fact that she has been held outside of the whole thing because of her perception of things. The reason why that happened is a holdover from Crisis on Infinite Earths, which is where she was first really introduced. Nearly everything that goes on in the DC universe from 1986 on, most of it came out of stupid shit that happened during Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Okay, that makes sense.
There are a lot of dramatic things that did go on during that storyline, which I absolutely loved and have made a difference in the DC universe, but there are some things that went on. Characters that we got, characters that we lost, characters that didn't get more development because of Crisis, and we're still paying for it to this day. Huntress was one of those characters. The way I saw her when I first came across her when I was reading Crisis on Infinite Earths, I looked at her character, looked at her background, I looked at her character design, I looked at her costume, and I said, so I'm guessing Marvel was doing something with Hawkeye, and DC said, I'll do you one better, and didn't do us one better.
Put tits on it.
Yeah. While in some cases I personally do think that does improve things, it is a very rare situation where that actually improves things. But the fact of the matter is the character that she is, the way that she acts, the things that she does, the choices that she makes are based on the actual comic character. And it comes through fairly well in the audio drama. Like when they were describing her, and the watch that she was wearing.
Oh, yeah.
It gives you a real understanding of her character when she's like, yeah, I'm wearing a Rolex. It is a perfectly good watch, but fuck this watch because it gets in the fucking way.
But she keeps on wearing it and replacing the crystal, and I'm just like, okay, any plastic sports watch will do, but no, this is what you've decided to go with. Okay, this is the very textbook definition of insanity.
Okay, now let's shift gears, because folks, you hear that I'm a jeweler at the beginning of every one of these. I'm about to drop some jewelry knowledge on your ass.
Please do.
Rolex, good Rolex, because you will see knockoffs of Rolexes all the friggin' time. Most Rolexes from, I'd say, before 2001 were all handmade. Every single one of them. We're talking build quality out the ass, okay?
Nice.
If you're willing to spend that kind of money, you are spending that kind of money on a hell of a watch. It is kind of an annoying thing to have to replace the crystal on a watch, but I can tell you for a certainty, you will spend the equivalent amount replacing those plastic sports watches doing the kinds of things that Huntress is doing. The crystal being replaced, that is something that is, in the grand scheme of things, fairly common. I've been working in the jewelry industry for coming up on 3 years now, and I have had my hands on probably about 40 Rolexes, about 15 of which were older than about 30 years old, 30 or 35 years old. You want to talk about some badass build quality. When you open the back of a Rolex watch, okay, you expect to see some cool shit. 90% of the Rolexes that I've come across are either what are called automatic winders, where they have the counterweight in the back, where as you're moving your arm, it continues to wind the watch, or they are mechanical, where you have to, continue to wind them over periods of time. The fact that every one of those watches is completely machined by hand, the fact that the movement has anywhere between 10 and 15 highly polished rubies being used as part of the movement, because they are the lowest friction jewels that you can put inside of a watch that will still be cost effective, and the fact that you can get your hands on Rolexes in steel, gold, or silver. You got your hands on something that is extremely durable, extremely useful. 10 karat gold, silver, and I want to say, I am not 100% certain, but I want to say some newer watches you will find in platinum.
Wow.
Hell of a build quality on a Rolex. But the crystals, even with the newer materials like sapphire crystal, not going to be as durable as the metal of that watch. So yeah, her complaining about it is kind of annoying. I will definitely say it. But when it comes to a choice of a watch, if you can't have a heads-up display, I would absolutely continue to replace the crystal on a Rolex watch, because that sucker will wear out after your wrist wears out.
All right, damn, dropping fact bombs. Got it.
Boom, James.
I understand what you're saying. Okay, perhaps it was more to demonstrate her stubbornness than anything.
Yes, agreed.
But Joe Schmo, listening to that up until this moment as Joe Schmo down the street, to me that was the textbook definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result each time. Why didn't she attempt to find literally anything else that could have replaced it? That part didn't make any sense to me. But now that I understand what you said, okay, fine, I get it. I don't know, maybe stick it in something. Just a thought. I don't know, wear it around your neck.
Oh man!
I mean, just
the fact that
other
they do
ways
spend
around
some
this.
time discussing that as well, it at least shows that there was some thought put into the whole description of the situation. But
true,
again, yes, I can completely agree that it put her into a less favorable light right from the beginning, and unfortunately, that was where she was going to be the entire story.
And the thing is, Oracle is also just as whiny, but for some reason I found Oracle to be a much more sympathetic and likable character. Even as she was bitching at Huntress about being Batgirl temporarily, I still found her more sympathetic. And it's not necessarily because this is oh gosh, what was the name of that series?
Birds of Prey?
Not Birds of Prey. No, but this is Oracle. This is the Oracle that we have after Joker has crippled her.
Oh,
so she's
that's
no longer,
Long Halloween.
Yeah, no, that wasn't Long Halloween.
What am I thinking?
That was.
I sworn it was Long Halloween.
Oh, and let's see.
Please hold while we figure this mess out.
Yeah. Let's see. Joker, cripples Batgirl. The Killing Joke. That's what it was. Yeah, that was in The Killing Joke.
Well, I feel like an asshole.
No, it's okay. I could see it in my mind of Joker taking the picture of her, which, before he did other unspeakable things, but I just could not remember the name. So yeah, it was The Killing Joke. And
yes, you are allowed to be screaming at us through whatever it is that you're listening to. Like, it was The Killing Joke! You guys don't know what you're talking about! Oh my God!
I know.
You're allowed to do that as much as you like.
We too are only human.
Yes.
But yeah, it's just I don't know, so we're seeing her after that, and it wasn't necessarily because of what happened to her there, because she had rallied and had accepted the mantle of Oracle, and we knew that, at least we had been given the impression over the course of the series that she had managed to accept the situation. But then being presented with this new version of Batgirl that she didn't necessarily vet, but again, who are you to decide that? That's Batman's job, not yours. She responded in a rather juvenile fashion, to be honest. Just, taunting her and, making snide comments and that kind of thing. I mean,
I can.
But that is a very girl response. They always say that when guys have problems with each other, eventually they'll beat each other up and then they'll go have a beer. Girls will taunt you into an eating disorder and then cry at your funeral. That's just kind of how that is. So I get that part. But I still found Helena slightly more juvenile than I did Barbara, and maybe that's just the way that they presented her, but I don't know. I didn't find her character to be that compelling.
I can understand that. I can definitely understand that. But with Barbara's whole response to her, that was what I was talking about when I said you can hear the pain in her voice when she's yelling at Batman.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes.
I loved that scene because it was evocative. It's like you're sitting there listening to her as she's recounting why the hell she feels the way that she feels. Like the way she was treating Batgirl was already a problem. And you could just see like there's tension, obviously. She's not happy with the whole situation, obviously. But when she goes the fuck off at Batman, oh my God, that worked so well for me. Because you could feel it. Because you could feel that she wanted to jump out of that freaking wheelchair at him and knew she couldn't.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you could probably name on one hand the number of characters in this story that don't give Batman a piece of their mind and say that he didn't deserve it because everybody lays into him pretty much except Alfred. And well, Alfred does it in his own more subtle way. But literally everybody yells at Batman during the story, and they're right to do it. There isn't any one person, even Huntress, as much as I dislike her, gives him what for. And you know what? You're just like, yep, you deserve that. You're being a dick. You deserve it.
With that being said, we've talked about a Batman story for such a long time now, and we haven't said anything about the Bat himself. The main reason that I enjoyed this story, even with not being the biggest fan of Batman, is because of the distinction between Batman and Bruce Wayne, and the fact that even he can't figure out how he goes back and forth.
Yes.
He had to practice being Bruce Wayne. That shit was hilarious.
Yes. And that goes back to something I said in one of our episodes about Batman versus Superman, where I talked about how Bruce Wayne is the mask and he is actually Batman.
Yes.
And this just continued to accentuate that. And I was listening to the long litany of things that he had to do to practice being Bruce Wayne. It was just like, yeah, that's actually hilarious.
Him forcing himself to check Mercy out.
Yeah.
I don't care what anyone says. That was absolutely perfect. Because it's not the kind of thing he actually wanted to do, but he knew he had to do it to keep up the appearance of things.
Yes, I have to pretend to carouse with, billionaires and, Russian oligarchs and, Playboy bunnies, yawn, and
I have to forget the girl of the week's name every time I can.
Yeah, even though he knows exactly who these people are, he knows their name, rank, and serial number. Because that is what Batman does. Batman doesn't forget things. And Bruce Wayne is supposed to be a himbo, and it's so anathema to him to have to be Bruce
I like
Wayne.
that. I've never heard that. I'm using that. I have always heard a man whore, but I've never heard himbo. I like that.
Oh, wow. I thought that was a common one. Okay. Please. Yeah, it's so fascinating. And yeah, the reason we haven't talked about Batman is because in this story called Batman No Man's Land, Batman is the least important character in it.
Yeah, like for the first 3
really
months
comes
of the
down
whole
to
thing, he's not friggin' there.
Yeah. We find out later that what he's doing is beneficial and he is actually trying to help in his own way. But ultimately, this is not a story about Batman.
Nope.
This is a story about Gotham City and the people in her.
There was actually a comic series in the early 90s, I think it was, that was called Astro City that kind of had the same thing going on. The characters that were in the comic changed from issue to issue.
Oh, wow.
The city was the main character.
Nice.
Everything was about what was going on in the city. Nobody gave a fuck about the characters as far as the way that things were written. But Astro City, the character that everyone cared about was the city itself. This same story.
Nice.
Gotham was all that mattered. Saving Gotham's soul was a phrase that was used over and over and over again. You cared about Gotham City. That's all there was to it.
Everybody else was just the side characters. Even Batman was a side character. Sorry, I'm watching Baby Joey scratching his chest. Sorry. It's so cute. Sorry.
Those of you who are listening, if you think we take ourselves serious, this is proof we do not.
No. But yeah, so the reason we're not talking about Batman is because Batman is a secondary character in a story called Batman No Man's Land.
Oh man, Now, the after effects are what really do it for me. Continue, and I have a point I want to make.
I was going to say, he's his own Deus Ex Machina in this story because he's so irrelevant to the story that literally he just comes in at the last minute and fixes things and tries to fix things, but they're already 3/4 of the way, almost there.
Yes.
So he's just there for the cleanup crew. But yes, please carry on.
Okay. One of the things that I do like about stories like this, because I have had this same kind of reaction after reading a comic that I hadn't read before, or a story that I wasn't as familiar with, I'm getting into, is the after effects. When you come across certain characters, when you are somewhat familiar with a story and you want to learn more and you start looking into things. For example, one of the things that I saw that you had linked here, which if you go into the description, you'll be able to check out some of the maps of Gotham City during and after the No Man's Land events, as well as what the city looked like beforehand during the Cataclysm. I found some of those same maps completely independent of the recording. I had also found that the game HeroClix had actually done a storyline based on No Man's Land. They had a map, and they had groups of characters that were supposed to be working together that you could use as a kind of like a D&D type campaign for No Man's Land, which I thought was interesting. Then, of course, finding out different characters' names and getting a little bit more background on them. Like, for example, knowing about Detective Montoya. I knew about the Question, okay? But I started looking back through some of the old comics to get a better idea of what Harvey Bullock looked like, because I remembered him from Batman the Animated Series, but I couldn't conjure the image in my head. Same thing with Cassandra Cain. I kept getting her mixed up with Kate Kane, who is Batwoman in the later series. They are two completely different characters. And in finding out about Cassandra Cain, I found out about Stephanie Brown, who was alluded to in a couple of different ways. She is a character that becomes a vigilante as well, that worked alongside her, called the Spoiler, which I still have amusement on that, because the way that she's designed, it's almost like they tried to remake Cassandra Cain's version of Batgirl, but said, we can't have them look alike. Make her purple. That is what it felt like.
So she's the DLC skin version. Got it.
But the after effects of reading a story or listening to an audio drama and wanting to find out more about the characters that you've just been introduced to, find out where they first showed up, find out if they had more Avengers, find out more about what is happening during that period of time in the comics in other places. That's the real magic for me. When you've heard a story that ignites something in your brain that says, I need to know more about this, that's when you know whatever it is has done its job, period.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. Absolutely. And, that these characters are so compelling. And, I'm glad they left out Superman and Azrael. I don't think that they would have added anything to the story, because in the comics, from what I was reading on the summaries, essentially Superman comes in, looks around and goes, yeah, I can't fix this in 30 seconds, and then goes home.
Unfortunately, I can't disagree with that.
So that would have added nothing to the story. So I'm glad that he wasn't here, because it would have been irrelevant.
Azrael kind of has the same thing going on, because unfortunately he's a little bit more on the broken side to begin with, because he is a powerful creature, but only when he's in his costume.
Wow.
As a character, I constantly am annoyed by Azrael, because he is DC's version of the greatest American hero.
Oh boy.
Has no abilities, has no access to his abilities unless he is wearing his costume. That bothers me. As a character in the costume, impressive as all hell, and was a damn good replacement for Batman for a period of time. This was during the time after Bane had broken his back. He was one of the folks that was in the Batsuit.
Okay.
But as a character, and knowing that that's how things worked for him, yeah, I'm glad he wasn't in this. Because I'd have been like, what is your deal?
Yeah, he sounds like a blank head. You can just project anything you want to on him.
If you take a look at some of the comics from this period of time, yeah, that is accurate.
Yeah, I can't stand characters like that. All right. Well, this, I think we've pretty much said as much as we can say about this, other than please go and listen to this. GraphicAudio has removed Batman No Man's Land from their site. However, wonderful people on YouTube have linked it. Some of it have it in chunks. Some of it have it in broken up into smaller episodes. But please, we'll link at least one of them down there, or you can, search for it yourself. But please go and listen to this. You will not regret it.
I
So,
cannot disagree one bit.
All right, then. I think we're done. So this is the end of season 1 of Little Old People Podcast.
Yes, there will be a season 2. No, we are not ending it on a cliffhanger.
No, we can if you want to. What am I going to have?
Hell no, I don't want to. I'm having fun doing this. We are absolutely just ecstatic about the fact that this thing that we just decided to do on a whim has had as many listeners as it has had.
Yes.
There was no point where we said, we're going to become rich and famous from the Little Old People Podcast.
No.
No. We're just two people who had really funny conversations about these kinds of things and said, why not record some of them? So
yeah,
we are grateful for every one of you who has listened to us sit here and act a damn fool. And I hope more than anything that as long as we are doing this, that you are continuing to, stick by us, because we will stick by you and continue to entertain you as best we can. With that, ways that you can be entertained by the Little Old People Podcast can be found on our link tree at linktr.ee/Little Old People Podcast, where you will find our social media, where you will find some of the locations that we are posting our podcast, for example, on Sounder, as well as in Google Podcasts. If you would like to let us know some things that you were thinking, what your attitude was towards, the first season of everything that we've been doing, you can send us a message on Facebook at facebook.com/littleoppodcast. You can send us a tweet at twitter.com/littleoppodcast. And if you would want to send us an email telling us how great or terrible we may have been, you can send us an email at littleoldpeoplepodcast@gmail.com. And a preview for season 2, there may just be another way that you can tell us a little bit more about us, as well as tell us about you. Stay tuned.
All right. Well, I've been Cheapy Mythos. He's been the little black dude, and we'll see you in the next one.
Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.